All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here recording on the Tuesday evening for our Wednesday episode, the July 27th episode number 53. We're coming in off of an entertaining weekend, some nice weather, and we're going to be talking a little bit of ADP choices this episode here. So before we get started, we'll say hello to the fellas and maybe recap on a nice little eventful weekend, and then we'll get into a little bit of fantasy football. So first thing we'll start off there with Zach. Zach, what's been keeping you busy, I guess, last couple of weeks?
I've been busy doing some stuff around the house, just odd little jobs that I've been putting off for the past couple of weeks or couple of months, I guess. Also staying up to date on Twitter with different goings of Team Sask. The U18 team won the Canada Cup showcase and they got gold, obviously. In the U18 Futures Western Showcase, the boys brought home gold. In the U16 Western Canada Cup, they brought home gold. And not to be outdone, the U18 women's team brought home silver at the Women's National Championship. And I guess starting this week in Finland, Team Canada has a team competing in the Women's World Championship, and several members of the Evan Hardy coaching staff are on that team. So wishing them all real well.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. It's a good time to be a Saskatchewan football player, I guess. My goodness. And then Armin, what about yourself? What's been keeping you busy?
Oh, your wedding, it was awesome. It had a blast. Thanks for the invite. It was a good time. And then just trying to get ready for baby number 2 on the way. So we had our fun, went to the lake for a week and a half there and had a blast swimming in the water. And then we're home now and just doing the waiting game.
Yeah, baby number 2, that is going to be coming up real quick, eh, Armin?
Oh, it's unbelievable how fast it's gone by. This year, I know the last school year for me went so fast because extracurricular was back and things are just flying by now.
Yeah. Talked about a little bit about the wedding hall, man. What a good time. I mean, first of all, I've never been so stressed my entire life. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but worth mentioning again, that morning was just like having to memorize everything for the church and make sure everything went good was just, yeah, it was terrifying for some stupid reason, but the reception was awesome. We had our friends there, the hashtag not a sponsor, the Bush Pies, that we had a live band for the evening, and man, they put on a pretty good performance. I'm a huge fan of the punk rock music, so they play a lot of like Blink-182 and some real good throwback tunes. So I was going pretty hard on the dance floor there. Body's a little bit sore the next morning, that's for sure. But it was a lot of fun. It was nice to see a lot of you guys. So obviously the two of you there, and we actually had some pretty quality fantasy football conversations outside in the parking lot too. So people were like, hey, where were you guys? Don't worry about it. We were talking trades, talking this, talking that, talking Green Bay wide receivers. We were having a good time. You can't get us into a room and not have some fantasy football conversations. But it was an awesome time. I'm obviously glad it's over now. A lot of stress off the shoulders. But by the time this episode drops here tomorrow, 2 days following, I'll be done master's classes too. So it'll be nice to kind of just get everything off the shoulders and finally get to enjoy a couple weeks of summer before school starts back up here. But I don't want to start talking about that too much because I want to actually enjoy those couple weeks. So just a couple other things here before we get started. I know Zach and I are wrapping up our Scott Fishbowl 12 satellite drafts. I know Zach, I think he's either done or just approaching conclusion.
Yeah, I wrapped it up. Sorry to cut you off there. I wrapped it up the morning, or a Saturday morning, actually, the morning of your wedding. And my last pick was an auto pick, and I thought I got a really good sleeper in John Menchie. And about a day later, unfortunately, the news broke that he is taking the season off to receive treatment for leukemia. So wishing him all the best. Really unfortunate situation for him, especially coming back from the ACL, I believe.
Yeah. And a Canadian too.
Yeah.
But I think I got 4 rounds left. Mine's been, we'll
man.
talk about it later. We'll have maybe have a special Scott Fishbowl episode later on, maybe, but it's been painful just guys timing out and just not putting in an auto draft and just timing out. It's been getting incredibly painful. But we're also now into a second other charity draft with myself and Zach. It's called the EFFC4. So the 4th season here. It's kind of the equivalent of the Scott Fishbowl, but a European version of it. The charity of this year is going towards clean drinking water within European communities. So Zach and I are both in the draft now. It just started today on the Tuesday. So we'll kind of keep you guys in loop of that one as well. It's an interesting league, actually. It's a super flex. So the only mandatory position is 1 quarterback you have to start. The rest is just completely flex. So you can have 1 additional super flex position. You can start 9 wide receivers, 9 running backs, a mixture of the obviously the remaining 9. So it's a bit of an interesting format. So the draft strategy is a little bit different. So maybe we'll kind of combine the 2 charity drafts into a little specialty episode later on there, but we'll keep you posted on that one. I think mine's going a little bit quicker than Zach's for the first time ever too. So we're going to be bouncing some ideas off each other there too. But I think that kind of includes a little bit of where we're at now, unless Zach, maybe you want to have a couple words about the charity drafts.
No, I think you did a great job of summing it up. This European one is I'm excited about it because, as you mentioned, the roster construction is going to be quite a bit different than what most people are accustomed to. So I'm anticipating some pretty unique builds amongst my, the other people in my league, and probably between you and I as well.
This is one of those ones where I might have a little fun with it and legit have a 0 RB build, because you legitimately don't need a single RB. So for the first time ever, you don't really win anything, right? It's all for charity. So we'll have a little bit of fun with it. I'll save some of this conversations for the special episode, but yeah, I'm excited for this draft because it's, like you said, it's completely unorthodox in comparison to other ones we were on. But we'll get a little bit of insiders and headliners going.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
So I'm going to start this segment off with a bit of a downer here. This is near and dear to my heart here. This one's a tough one. My 2022, 2021 season, whatever it might have been, SAS certified my guy, Chris Carson. I was pumping his tires all off season, battled some injuries and a continuing neck injury. He's officially called it a career this morning and is retiring and stepping away from the game of football. But just kind of an interesting comment that goes into this too. Obviously, it's a terrible situation. He was an incredible running back, but just your health is more important in the situation, especially when it comes to neck injuries. But while he's retiring, the Seahawks actually released him under the unfit to play CBA rule, I think it was called, which basically is going to allow him to receive several millions of dollars in injury protection benefits. So he will not be getting paid out his contract because he is retiring, but he still has the opportunity to basically recover a lot of the financial costs that he is going to lose because he's unable to play due to the injury. So the Seahawks did him real well by sending him off this way, because they could have just let him walk and he would have had zero financial commitment, or they would have zero financial commitment to him. But obviously he was a key contributor to their success the last couple of seasons, and he was a good locker room guy as well too. So the Seahawks doing it the right way this way. But I mean, I think this was something we all kind of expected, whether it was now or was down the middle of the season or was next year. I think we were all kind of preparing for fantasy this upcoming year without Chris Carson and the focal of the other 2 running backs in Seattle. I think, does anybody else kind of disagree with that or agree with that?
No, I was kind of in that boat too. I was ready for the other 2 guys, but like I was texting you earlier today, always been cheering for Chris Carson and rooting for him, and it sucks that he's going out this way, but at least he is getting that money paid to him through that injury protection benefits, and that's a good move by the Seahawks to take care of him like that too, by releasing him that way.
Another piece of news here. This one just dropped this morning too. We had a couple this morning, and then we have a couple pieces that dropped earlier in the week as well. Julio Jones signs a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this was an interesting one. He's been a free agent for quite some time now and delayed. And I think we actually had this discussion on a couple episodes prior, talking about where we think he might end up going. And I think one of the main focal points we thought was Green Bay, and it came out that Green Bay was one of the final two to kind of kick the tires, I guess, on him and possibly bring him into the receiving core. But Tampa Bay reached out to him. Tom Brady reached out to him, and Julio Jones is signing the 1-year deal. So, I mean, there's a couple avenues we can go about this. Is Julio Jones in the fantasy perspective himself, obviously off a down year in Tennessee? Is Julio Jones done, or has he still got some juice? That's a conversation in itself. But then what does this do to the auxiliary pieces? Is it still the same thing for Mike Evans? Chris Godwin looks like he's going to be coming back a little bit sooner than expected. We had his name from Atlanta is escaping me. Sorry?
Russell Gage.
Russell Gage, thank you. He was looking like a nice little sleeper piece, or some guy that somebody wanted to pick up kind of in the middle of the draft to do with possibly the Godwin injury, may not be coming back, and just maybe that connection with Tom Brady. But now there's a lot of moving pieces here. I guess maybe Zach, we'll go to you first. What's your perspective on this, I guess, for the receiving core? And then maybe we'll go to Armin about Julio Jones himself.
Well, I've been keeping a close eye on Chris Godwin, as I actually picked him up late in the satellite draft for Scott Fish. But before I made that pick, I read several articles, and most of the articles that I read indicated that he was looking like he was going to be coming back sooner than later. And this morning, I think prior to the signing, they let out that he wasn't going to go on PUP and that he was going to be ready to go for training camp. So in that regard, things seem to be pointing up for him. But in terms of Jones, I don't think it really moves the needle too much on Evans or Godwin. If anything, it does dampen the prospects of a Russell Gage breakout. So maybe that Russell Gage season lasted from March until July kind of thing. So like, I don't know if it moves the needle too much fantasy wise. Like, you still have the two big dogs in Evans and Godwin. So I don't know. And like, looking at it now, Julio Jones is wide receiver 74, overall ADP 226. The guys in front of him at receiver, I would rather take a shot on them. I'd rather take a shot on Josh Palmer with the Chargers. I'd rather take a shot on Jahad Dotson with the Commanders, Pickens with the Steelers, Chark with the Lions, Moore with the Cardinals. So even with this signing, I don't think personally I am looking to move him up too far.
I think if anything, this may be a tick up for Tom Brady. It's just an additional weapon, right? I don't know if it's going to take much away from those additional receivers, but what it is just another experienced, bigger body receiver that might benefit him within our fantasy context. But Armin, is that somebody that you're willing to maybe take a gamble on? Is Julio Jones later in your drafts, or do you think we've kind of seen the best of him?
Near the end of drafts, I would. Some of those names Zach listed, I would disagree that I would take a crack at him over those guys. And, with him being older, you're probably going to know right away whether you got something or not there, and you're not going to have to try and hold on to him too long. So he's a guy that would be a decent flyer, in my mind, at least, taking near the end of the draft. And if he booms in the first few weeks, you can either trade him or hope that he carries that throughout the whole season. Or if he kind of stinks and you see that he's the third or fourth fiddle in that Tampa Bay offense, you can drop him.
Not comparing Julio Jones to Antonio Brown by any stretch of the imagination, but you did see Tom Brady support 3 wide receivers last year. We had Evans was still successful, Godwin was still successful, and then Antonio Brown had major contribution weeks when he was healthy or not stripping on the sidelines. So it's possible that Tom Brady can still support 3 wide receivers, but then Russell Gage is still in the mix too, right? So now there's 4. And you're going to think Scotty Miller still gets snaps there. Tyler Johnson's in the mix, but a lot of these guys are outside looking in, but there's still a lot of bodies within the wide receiver room. So, I mean, a guy literally this news dropped, and a guy in our Scott Fish League got him in like the 19th round or the 18.8 or something like that. So I mean, that's an absolute steal. But his ADP is going to rise from that, right? That was just, he didn't have a team, he was unsigned, so that's where you get him. But it'll be interesting to see where that ADP lands come, your home league draft season, because if it starts creeping into like, the 10th round, then I'm for sure going to be pretty hands off on Antonio, or on, sorry, I almost said Antonio Brown, off Julio Jones. But it'll be interesting where that ends up lining up,
Like you said, Tom Brady proved last year he could support 3 wide receivers. So it's not out of the realm of possibility of him actually having a decent season. Just he's got to come back to form, and there's been 2 seasons in a row where he hasn't been in form here. So he's starting to look a little washed. I think Green Bay fantasy wise definitely would have been a better place for him to go. But football wise, probably Tampa.
Yeah, I actually agree with that for sure. Talking about Tom Brady, talking about another good quarterback here for fantasy, Kyler Murray. He was on the holdout type struggle bus this whole offseason, and he ends up signing a deal last week towards the end of the week there. 5-year, $230.5 million deal with $160 million of it fully guaranteed. So it's funny, I was listening to another couple podcasts talking about Kyler Murray and some of the fan bases in Arizona, and they're all frustrated, we have to pay him so much money. And it's the podcast made a good point. It's like, that's a good problem to have. That's why you draft a number 1 overall quarterback, so that after 5 years you have to pay him a buttload of money, because that means he's really good. Like, what are you complaining about? Like, would you rather have Josh Rosen because you drafted him the year before that too? Like, it's kind of funny to think about, just the fan base is just complaining just for the sake of complaining. But this is good for, I think, not only Kyler Murray, but it's good for those auxiliary pieces in Arizona now that they have their good premier quarterback lined up for the future. You got him for 5 years. So knowing that those pieces that are around him, there's some solid pieces. I know Hopkins obviously getting older, but some young receivers there, especially connecting. Well, I know they just talked about actually the hamstring tweak from Hollywood Brown there too. So, I mean, that's something to kind of monitor. But do you have those young auxiliary pieces that are going to be with a good premier quarterback for a good duration of time? I mean, looking at Trey McBride, a tight end, you usually have to wait a few years to see those guys blossom. So that'd be an interesting name to kind of monitor within the years to come as well. So that's a big piece of news for fantasy, more or less for dynasty, I suppose, less than the redraft. But
I think one more thing to add about that contract is, like, right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's the number 1 quarterback contract. Is that correct?
Yes, but not when it comes to guaranteed money. That's still Deshaun Watson, but the overall money is to Kyler Murray.
So in a year's time, in 2 years' time, that's going to be like the 7th, 8th, 9th.
This is the way it goes. Yeah.
Right. Because like as soon as you get Herbert,
Joe Burrow,
Burrows, like Jackson, once he signs, even like Hurts, maybe like once all these next guys get their turn, every contract's going to go to the highest paid, and then it's just going to keep on, jumping one after the other. So it'll eventually balance out, and this will look like a pretty good deal, I'm sure, in a year or two.
Yeah, especially if he becomes this top 3 quarterback in the NFL, and all of a sudden 3-4 years down the road, you're only paying the guy top 15 10 million or something, like 15 million on the last year. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this one's front end loaded or something. I can't remember how it'll work because of the guaranteed money, but those last couple of years, and then there was 15, 16 quarterbacks on the pay scale in front of them, and you're an absolute bargain. That's a good point, Zach. Talking about another big deal here. I talked about Chris Carson, somebody that was near and dear to my heart here. We'll talk about somebody that's near and dear to the heart of Zach Strong. N'Keal Harry is leaving the New England Patriots for a conditional 2024 7th round pick to the Chicago Bears. So I know, Zach, you've already dropped him in fantasy leagues, but is it worth picking him up on a flyer in your dynasty league, or are you leaving him at the tombstone there?
I'm not going to touch him, but if there was going to be an offense to go to or a team to go to, he landed in a good one for him. Landed in a team that desperately needs warm bodies in the receiver room, and he's a warm body, so that's good for him, I guess.
That's the kindest way you described him, I think, other than when you drafted at 101. He's a warm body, and that's what you need.
I think it was 102 actually.
Yeah, 102. I think I had Josh Jacobs, I think at 101 maybe or something like that.
There's a guy I follow on Instagram, and he does little skits of like what's going on in the NFL, and he plays like all the different players and stuff, or acts as each one of them. And he did one where it was Mac Jones talking to N'Keal Harry, and he was like, "Oh man, I was excited to play with you. It's tough to see you traded before we even get to play together." And Harry's like, "I was here all last year," and he's like, "Oh, didn't even notice you." No way. You're a rookie.
Also pretty accurate. I think he actually had like a half decent week 1, if I'm not mistaken. And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, sell him high." And then it was like, no, N'Keal Harry is going to do N'Keal Harry things. Next episode, we're going to get into the next segment here. That'll do it for insiders and headliners. We're going to be talking about ADP choices. And if you want to talk about choices, you go on to 22fresh.com and you're going to find yourself some choices to be looking good this summer and upcoming fall season. I'm wearing my hat. I'm wearing it lots, actually. I'm trying to limit how often I wear it because I don't want to get the sweat stains on it and ruin this nice hat. But as we get to the colder weather, the fall approaches, the 22 Fresh hoodie is going to start busting out here. They got some great opportunities and great options online there for you to be able to go and fit anything that maybe is a little bit to your style. They even have nice hockey apparel if you're into the hockey apparel stuff too, and the combination with David Pasternak. So they got different avenues. I know they even had a little booth set up at Craven. So if you were at Craven, maybe stopped into the 22 Fresh booth. So when you go to find those choices at 22fresh.com, your next checkout, make sure you use the promo code 306 FFB15, and you'll get yourself 15% off at the checkout for 22fresh.com. So our benefits now benefit you, the listeners at home as well, and making sure that in your next purchase with 22 Fresh, you receive that 15% off with 306 FFB15. So thank you very much, 22 Fresh, for your major sponsorship of this year, and make sure you check out their selection online and stay tuned for their fall collection coming out soon. So choices. How this is going to work, folks, is we're going to propose an ADP of a player and have 3 that are going around a similar boat. And we're going to kind of discuss on maybe who of the 3 we would want to select based on their average draft position. So ADP obviously standing for average draft position. We got the quarterback position, wide receiver, RBs, and tight ends. And we'll go through those with a little bit of discussion. So without further ado, here's Zach's going to lead us off with the tight end position.
All right. So I guess choices here: Dalton Schultz, tight end 7, and he is currently going with an ADP of 66. So comparing Dalton Schultz, would you rather have TJ Hawkinson at tight end 6 going 5 picks before him at ADP of 61? You guys want to answer that?
So say that again, Zach, sorry.
So what do you guys think about that? Would you rather have
so
Schultz?
Is it TJ Hawkinson versus Schultz first?
Yeah.
I'm going. So this one sucks because I love Hawkinson and I want him all as much as I can get in Dynasty. But I think for redraft this year, I'm all over Schultz. Maybe Armin, do you agree, disagree? I'll give a little bit of a 2 cents why, but I want to hear what you think first.
I would agree as well. Schultz had a more proven season last year. Like, he actually destroyed last year. He was a good pickup that you could have got as a sleeper last year. And I think he's going to continue with that because you look at how many guys left that receiving core from Dallas, and he should be able to continue on where he was last year and maybe even go further up.
So Hawkinson missed a significant amount of time last season, and he was one of my favorite tight end targets last year. But a lot of the similarities on them are actually a wash. Like if you look at the Zeke Pollard situation as they compare that to Swift, the amount of targets that the two are going to get, that's going to be pretty darn similar. I imagine the targets, I don't have them right in front of me, but the targets and to the running back position are going to be pretty darn similar. Swift is obviously a pass catching back. Zeke is a really good pass catching back as well. Then you look at the wide receiver situation. We have Amon St. Brown, who had a really good season, and then the drafting of Jamison Williams. And then on the other side, you got CeeDee Lamb and then vacated targets. and a pretty injured wide receiver room right now in Dallas. So that's where maybe I start leaning Hawkinson versus Schultz. I'd like to go Schultz because he may be the number 2 in targets on the team, right? Where Swift is probably going to be ahead of Hawkinson, I'm going to guess. And then the combination of Amon-Ra, Cephas is in the mix too. But then it's just plain and simple, Jared Goff less than sign Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is superior quarterback than Jared Goff. And that's a high flying offense. And I actually have high expectations for Dallas because their offense seemingly wasn't great last year. That's because their defense led the NFL significantly in touchdowns. So I like the Dallas offense, and actually Schultz is one of my favorite targets right now at the tight end position.
So I'll give you one
he
more.
finished last year as tight end 3. Like
Dynasty, though, it's sketchy because he doesn't have a contract yet, so he very well could be on a different team next year. But redraft, I'm all over it.
I'll give you guys one more. Dalton Schultz at tight end 7, 66 overall, or Zach Ertz, tight end 10, 97th overall. So we're talking 2 to 3 rounds after Dalton Schultz.
This one I have a lot harder time with. I actually really like Zach Ertz. I remember last year Armin and I were doing supervision, and I said, if Zach Ertz could go to one team, I want him either Buffalo or Arizona. I was just all over. Those are 2 teams that needed tight ends. And the 3 full round gap, just about. Like the 10th round, you're looking at Zach Ertz versus like a flyer wide receiver. But when you look at Schultz versus like, what is that, ADP 66, like that's in the 5th round. That'd be
depending on the size of your league.
Early 6th round. Like you're looking Dalton Schultz versus like Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. Those are pretty good wide receivers. So I still lean Schultz because I think there's a lot of upside with him. But like Zach Ertz is like a free square. You're going to get an abundance of targets for the first 6 games while DeAndre Hopkins is out. And who knows if Hopkins even comes back the same as he was. So I still lean Schultz because I'm really high on him this year in redraft. But Zach Ertz is very, very tempting.
See, here's where I'd be sitting with Ertz. If I'm waiting for Ertz, then I might wait for like Gesicki or Fairmouth or Komet or Irv Smith Jr. all behind him, even, who are all decent and young tight ends who could have a breakout this year. So I think I might stick with Schultz on that too, being a little bullish towards Schultz. I'm just going with the more proven, and in the tight end position, you don't want to be stuck with a tight end that you maybe took a gamble on and you end up having to stream a guy every week because you took the wrong guy.
I mean, you could easily be streaming still with Schultz. Don't hear what I'm not saying here. I actually really, really like Ertz. Like this is an incredibly difficult decision because I think Zach Ertz is going to be undervalued. Now, there's a situation where Armin kind of made a good point. If you're waiting and that's your guy, you might have to take him a little bit earlier than ADP, right? Because you might end up with a guy like Gesicki, which I'm not a huge fan on. But I think look at Zach Ertz's numbers last year since when he joined Arizona, and they were incredible. And the amount of times that when Kyler, after being hurt, targeted the tight end position was substantial. But one of the main reasons I haven't taken Ertz as much as I like is because I have a lot of shares of James Conner as well. So I'm trying to not, take 2 options because I want if I'm going to go for a stack, it's obviously going to be Kyler and the tight end position, not the running back and the tight end position, because they both can't give me points, which I guess in the 10th round or whatever it is, where you're getting Ertz is a little bit different, but that's a little bit into the mind of where I'm at on this, but I'm curious to see what Zach thinks.
So actually, of those 3, I was tending to favor Hawkinson, actually.
Really?
Yeah, Hawkinson, he did miss 5 games, but at a point per game pace, Hawkinson is only 0.4 points behind Schultz. Schultz had 10 even on the season, and Hawkinson had 9.6. So My thought here is with the improved weapons in Detroit, that could potentially open things up more for Hawkinson. And traditionally, it's taken 3 to 4 years for most tight ends to come into their own in the NFL. And that's exactly where Hawkinson is right now in his career. So I'm looking at a quarterback in Jared Goff that isn't going to spray the ball deep downfield, but in that short to intermediate route where most tight ends do their damage, I'm looking at Hawkinson here to maybe have a big season.
Hawkinson is an absolute bargain for Dynasty right now, too, coming off the tough season. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he was talking about the tight ends that have put up the numbers that he did in his first 2 seasons. And it was like guys like all Hall of Famers. There was like 15 or 11 names or something like that. And they're all first ballot Hall of Famers except for one of them. Like it was just like a group of guys that's like, he has to be good. If you do these types of numbers for your first 2 and you're compared to these guys, it's like you have to be good. And coming off of an injured season and now obviously adding weapons, you can get Hawkinson at an absolute bargain. So I like that Zach likes him in redraft because that means I got him a lot of dynasty. So I'm going to be all over because I want a big season from him this year too. Okay, so we are going to continue on here and we're going to get to Armand, who is going to take care of some running backs here with some interesting ADP situations. Armand, you want to share your running backs?
All right. So the first 2 running backs that I'm going to list here are RB13 and RB14, and that is Barkley and Fournette. Barkley's currently going at an ADP of 24 and Fournette's ADP 25. And I listed these 2 because Fournette was going pretty high for us at the beginning of the season, and now reports are coming out that he's coming in a little bit overweight and the coaches aren't too happy. So that might put some more question marks on us here. And then you put Barkley in there and lots of question marks about his health and whether he can return back to the dominant Barkley that we all know and love.
Zach, you want to go first?
Sure. So between those 2, I'm going to favor Barkley for the simple fact that between Fournette and Barkley, I think Barkley is the one that offers like league winning potential. He's the type of running back that when he was healthy as a rookie, he had an exceptionally high amount of receptions. And I think he was like a top 5 running back that season, if I'm not mistaken. Since then, he has dealt with the injury bug. But I think while Fournette is a great running back, really good running back 2, if you can make that work, Barkley offers that elite league winning potential if he's able to stay healthy. But I will say that I'm not too worried about Fournette's alleged weight gain. This is kind of like a clickbait season. And that's a pretty easy headline for somebody to write in the media. And it's not like Fournette's ever been kind of like a scat back, slim down kind of running back. He's always been kind of a big bully between the tackle kind of guy. So that doesn't worry me, but I think Barkley's league winning potential is what's going to win the day for me.
I agree with Zach in completely. I hear a couple of things just to add to Barkley. This is one of the better O-lines he's had in his career in front of him. And this is one of the healthiest he's been since his rookie season. So for those reasons, and I was a Barkley truther, obviously went and traded for him this offseason. Not to say I don't like Fournette, kind of similar argument Zach had made. It's just that I agree. I think Barkley has the upside, and I think you're getting an absolute bargain with him at his ADP, where Fournette, he's going to have to produce. We've seen him fluctuate in production in years past. We've seen a really good year in Jacksonville. Then we've seen an absolute decline. Then we've seen him get traded cuts. I can't remember how it worked out. Then a slow burn until he actually started producing with Tampa Bay. So I think you know what you've got with Barkley, and at worst, he's going to be a pretty good RB2, and he can also be a league-winning RB1, like Zach said. So I agree.
Yeah, that's I agree with both of you guys that way. With the upside of Barkley, it's hard not to take him, especially like you could potentially get a league-winning RB as your RB2 and have the 101 currently the way it's sitting right now, right? Because he's sitting at an ADP of 24 in a 12-team league. You could potentially get him at the end of the second round and have the 101 and your second round pick be Barkley, which is pretty wild if you ask me.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Fournette, I'm glad, Zach, that you talked about his weight coming in, because that was back in July, I think, that he weighed that heavy, and he could have been bulking up. Who knows what was going on there? And he's a professional, and like you said, he's always been a pounder. The last little bit that you guys didn't talk about, though, is also Barkley has Matt Breida waiting behind him, whereas Fournette has Rashad White, who is a guy that I'm really high on as far as his draft, as far as his profile
and pass catching ability too.
And his pass catching ability, yeah. He's behind Fournette, just waiting, chomping at the bit, ready to go. And like if you watch any interviews with him, like he's a driven guy who wants to be the RB1 at some point in that on that team. So he's going to be breathing down Fournette's neck as well this season.
Can't believe we almost didn't use the Fournette clip.
Get the net.
Forgot we had that.
So then the next one I want to bring in after that was a guy that doesn't really have many question marks behind him. He's had 2 solid seasons after not starting out too hot in the NFL, but now he's kind of started to prove himself as a good, reliable workhorse running back, and that's David Montgomery. So you throw him into the mix there, and you guys still going Barkley?
Yeah, this one's easy. No. I am actually a bit concerned about Montgomery with the new coaching regime and the emergence of what is now sophomore Khalil Herbert. He had a really good rookie campaign. You never know what's going to happen with a new coaching regime. So I'm a little bit concerned about Montgomery, and I still have that up arrow for Barkley. So it's an easy one for me.
Yeah, I want to stick with Barkley just because of the potential. But as somebody that's had both Montgomery and Barkley on the same dynasty team for a couple of years, like the dependability of David Montgomery is just outstanding. He's like the Ford Focus, the Toyota Corolla of dynasty running backs. Like this guy's doing 13-game seasons, 15-game seasons, 16-game seasons. Like he doesn't miss a lot of football, and he is a steady Eddie running back to, like, God bless you, David Montgomery.
Do you think he's going to be an RB2 again this year, Zach?
I do, yeah. I think Herbert offers enough difference in skill set from Montgomery that they can they can coexist in the offense while still having Montgomery be the workhorse.
I got a Khalil Herbert Genesis rookie card, so I'm hoping he absolutely has a career, because that card goes up in value. But that's just pure out of my own intentions and wishful thinking. But Armin, where do you sit, Barkley or Montgomery?
I would sit Barkley still too, for the same reasons you guys talked about. And Herbert does worry me a little bit. He was more efficient than Monty, but like Zach said, he's got a different skill set. But in order for that offense to support 2 RBs, like we've seen other teams do in the NFL, and it's definitely a thing that can happen where you have 2 RBs that are worth playing in fantasy on one team. That offense needs to take huge strides forward this year in order to do that as well. But it is within the realm of possibility. The little tidbit, like Zach said, with the Ford Focus part of Montgomery, is that if you take a risky pick in your first round at the RB, or your first RB is a risky pick, maybe take Monty just for that safe little pick there. And then if you take a for sure, or what, I guess if you don't take a risky pick in the first round, then maybe then you take the risk with Barkley in the second round, right? If you want to play it like that, you always want to have that balance between risk and playing it safe on your roster.
I had a hard time picking which ones I want to do here. I'm taking care of the wide receivers. So I put 2 in here, but I think I'm going to go with the one that I wanted to go first. The second one I had was a group of second-year wide receivers that actually are incredibly close in ADP. But the ones I want to go with here, the first 2, I'm going to go with the ones in my gut. I have DJ Moore, who is the wide receiver 18 at ADP 50. So he's going at the round 5.2. And then we got Mike Williams, wide receiver from the Los Angeles Chargers, wide receiver 19. So they were going back to back against each other in the wide receiver rankings, but ADP, he's at 55. So it's about a 5-pick gap between the 2 of them. And he's going about around 5.7. So between the 2 of them, they're both young wide receivers. One has an upgrade at quarterback. The other one still has the contract signed with a premier quarterback. So where are you going, DJ Moore or Mike Williams? We'll start with Armand.
Oh boy. I just quickly was looking here because my gut instinct was telling me Mike Williams over DJ Moore. But DJ Moore quietly had actually a pretty good season last year, and he wasn't that far off from where Mike Williams finished last year. But I think I'm still going to stick with Mike Williams here. You guys kind of convinced me on our last episode there, the way you're talking about him. There's a possibility he becomes the alpha and over Keenan Allen in LA there. And then the quarterback play for the Chargers is definitely going to be better than the quarterback play for Carolina, because we don't even know who is going to be the quarterback there.
Zach, do you agree?
And this is going to be a pretty boring episode. I think we're all agreeing with one another. I think Mike Williams for me is the easy choice. Mike Williams showed just last year that he has the potential to be a top 12, a top 10 receiver in the offense that he is currently in. And while DJ Moore has been a top end receiver, even last year being a top 20 receiver, I think with the offense that's around him and the uncertainty at quarterback and the potential for the coaching staff, or with Matt Rule at least, to get fired within this season, that leaves a lot of, I guess, unpredictability in his range of outcomes. And if I'm going to draft a receiver in the first couple of rounds like that, I do want to have some predictability. And even with the volatility that Mike Williams does have in his game, I do think it's more predictable and more safe than what DJ Moore might be dealing with this year.
I agree with you guys both. I talked about Mike Williams last time and how much I do like Mike Williams. So that's an easy decision here for me. So the next one here we're going to talk about is, I'm just pulling it up here. We got Mike Williams and we got Jerry Jeudy. So this one's a little bit more interesting in a sense that, and I got Jerry Jeudy. I can say Courtland Sutton, depending on who you believe is the wide receiver 1. So I'll leave that up in air. Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 21. Courtland Sutton is the wide receiver 24. So Courtland Sutton's 64 ADP, Jerry Jeudy 61. So that would put Jerry Jeudy at round 6.2. And then Courtland Sutton would be about 6.7. So we're looking around a full round gap between Mike Williams and Courtland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy about 8 or so picks ballpark. So it depends on who you think would be the wide receiver 1 in Denver with the new quarterback, or Mike Williams. Are you staying the part? We'll start with Zach. We'll come back to Armin on this one.
I think I'm still going to stick with Mike Williams. With Mike Williams, we know exactly what we're going to get. We know that even with Keenan Allen in place, Mike Williams is able to be a back end wide receiver 1 or a really valuable, really dominant high end wide receiver 2. What we don't know right now is how that pecking order is going to break down in Denver. Right now, all we know is that they get a massive upgrade at the quarterback position with Russell Wilson. What we don't know is how that's going to shake out amongst targets. Is he going to be hyper focused on one of those guys, or is he going to spread the ball around? And I think we might be discounting Tim Patrick. Maybe Tim Patrick is the receiver that Russell Wilson really, really favors.
And you can get him in like the 9th, 10th round.
Yeah, he's like he's like Julio Jones territory right now.
Yeah.
Like wide receiver, like 70. So not that I think Judy or Sutton are necessarily bad picks. I just think that Mike Williams is maybe a more safer option at the price that you're going to pay. But with that said, you could also, scratch and win like the $1 million prize, and you might get the Bronco receiver that, is like a top 5 option. So
he's wide receiver 64, so he's in the boonies just for confirmation.
Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the safer bet is Mike Williams, still with the unpredictability in his range of outcomes, but I'd rather take that than kind of the unknown with Judy and Sutton.
What's your thoughts there, Armand?
I want to play devil's advocate on this one really badly. My heart's with Mike Williams, but I'm trying to think of an argument for Jerry Jeudy, and I'm just struggling right now. Or even Cortland Sutton there. Like Zach said, we don't know who Russell Wilson's going to pick to be his number 1 guy. And then even in Seattle, it was hard to predict who was going to go off there. So we never really had like a number 1 guy once Metcalf came in between him and Lockett, right? Like it was 1 week Lockett would go off for 40 points, and then the next week it was DK and Lockett was getting like 5 points, right? So it just kind of goes game by game, it seems, with Russell Wilson. So I'm going to trust in Herbert a little bit more. And I also have this feeling that the Chargers are going to be in more shootouts as well than the Broncos. The Broncos do have that pretty good defense. Not to say the Chargers have a bad defense, but I think the Broncos defense is a little bit more stout going into the season here.
We've seen Sutton put up over 1,100 yards in his sophomore season. He put 704 in his rookie season, 100, just about 100, just over 111 in his sophomore, and then he got injured, and then 776 last year, and that was with abysmal quarterback play. I'm leaning towards the sense that I think Cortland Sutton is going to be the wide receiver 1. ADP would disagree with that. It's Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Judy's got the more of the quicker twitch profile, where Cortland Sutton's got maybe the bigger body, 6'4", 216-pound frame. If I knew who's gonna be the wide receiver 1, I think this would be an easy one. I would want to go with Russell Wilson and the shot at this year's Cooper Kupp. Like that is the realm of possibilities with the wide receiver 1 here, and you're getting them in the 5th round here. We're looking at 6th round, so early 6th towards the late 6th. Where was Cooper Kupp last year? I want to say he was in the 5th, middle 5th.
Yeah.
So we're in that range of possibility where both of them have elite profiles, but I don't think Mike Williams could be wide receiver 1. Where I think Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, it's in the range of possibilities for them with that, because we never seen him with an elite quarterback, right? So I still this is a hard one, because best ball I'm leaning Mike Williams for sure. If I'm in my redraft leagues, I think I'm going to take the shot on one of those Denver wide receivers, and that's pretty well based on roster construction. If I have a locked and loaded elite like Justin Jefferson wide receiver 1, then I'm going to take Mike Williams. Where if I got maybe the Tyreek Hill in the 3rd round or middle of 2nd, then okay, maybe I'll go with the high floor, possibly low ceiling Denver option. But that's it's tough to say, because it all depends on who you're drafting in that construction, right? Last one here, Zach. Do you want to talk about the quarterbacks?
Sure. So this one's kind of been on my mind just with the Scott Fish draft and the EFFC draft, both being super flex. So this is the Jalen Hurts question. So right now, Jalen Hurts is quarterback 8 with an ADP of 68 overall. Would you rather have Hurts at that price or Dak Prescott at quarterback 7, ADP 65?
Armin, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Armin, do you want to go first?
Oh, I thought you said, can I go first? All right,
Oh.
sorry. that is a tough one. Hurts has kind of made strides every season. But you know what? I think I'm gonna stick with Dak here. Just the proven capability there. They're not too far off ADP wise. If maybe one was quite a bit lower, then I'd choose that one. But they're so close there that I'll stick with Prescott and just play it safe at the quarterback position, rather than taking the rushing upside of Hurts, because I don't quite believe in him quite yet. I think he needs another year of growth to really be an elite fantasy option.
Here we go. We got a disagreement going here. Finally, I'm taking Jalen Hurts because last year, Jalen, and even the year before, especially the year before, Jalen Hurts was not a good football player. Even the start of last year, Jalen Hurts wasn't a very good football player, but he was still top 10 in fantasy points every single week. Now, towards the end of the season, we started seeing him make gigantic strides, like Armin already said, as a football player. And Devonta Smith was putting up productions. He was targeting the running backs a little bit, and he's still doing a lot of mobile quarterback things. He was having a really good season, and towards the stretch, he was finishing in that quarterback 1 to 5 range down the stretch. Now adding an incredible premier big body wide receiver like AJ Brown, who is really, really good with the contested catches. I think that's just going to put him above. I've seen a lot of high profile fantasy analysts rating Jalen Hurts as QB2 on the season, going AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts. And that's not 1, 2, that's several. And that's in the range of possibilities. He has that high floor with the running, and then you can add the opportunity of him taking a next step forward with his passing with the addition of some weapons. I think it's in the range of possibility, where it is in the range of possibility with Dak, but we haven't seen the last couple of years because his rushing has gone down significantly because of the injury to 2 seasons ago, a season and a half ago. I do like Dak Prescott a lot. I do think he's going to have a good season, but I'm going to take the discounted 1 round later on Jalen Hurts with the continued increased tick of his rushing platform and gaining weapons. So I'm going to take Jalen Hurts in that situation.
Interesting. All right. So this one it's kind of building off what we just talked about with you there, JC. Would you rather have Jalen Hurts, quarterback 8, ADP of 68 overall, or would you rather have Russell Wilson, quarterback 10, ADP 74?
Do you want me to go first in this one, Armand, or do you want to go?
You can go first.
Okay, I'm sticking with Hurts. The 68 to 74, we're looking at like about a ballpark, about a full round, somewhere in that general area. Jalen Hurts, same system, same coaching staff, addition of one huge weapon, where Russell Wilson is going into a new coaching staff, a new system, new wide receivers, and we've seen it take time for them to establish some of that dominance. Not to say he can't do it week 1, but I'm going to bet on the side of history where maybe it's going to take a little bit of time to get it going. Now, I do think he's going to have a good season, but that's going to be your year-end season, and he's going to pick it up towards the end, where maybe at the start of the season he's going to have declined numbers, and that might hurt you in your standings if you're relying on that quarterback in the first couple of weeks and he puts up not great numbers. Where Jalen Hurts, I still see that trajectory going forward. 1 round discount, I think, isn't enough for me to maybe make that plunge. So I'm still going to stick with Jalen Hurts because I am high on Jalen Hurts this year.
So of those 3, Armin, you have to go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pardon me. Sorry, go ahead there, boss.
Yeah, I think what Jordan said there about Russ, like it might take some time there to get things going. But
what about Dak? What about Dak to Russ, Armin?
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and that one is like a full round. You can wait around to pick up your QB and maybe pick up a different piece somewhere else. And you know what? I might be willing to take that gamble and wait around to pick up Wilson around later there. Let me just quickly look here.
You love Russ, though. You had him on your rosters every year in the teacher league.
No, I didn't have him last year.
Okay, well, the 3 years before that you did. Every year I played against you was a big week in week 5, and he crushed me every single week, every year.
Oh boy. You know what? Like, if I miss out on Russell Wilson, you know, I got Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Trey Lance. You know what? I'd be willing to wait the round and gamble on Russ coming to me in the next round there and taking a different piece instead of taking Dak Prescott there. Yeah.
I'm curious what Zach thinks.
So of those three, I think I would go with Russ actually. Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, they both play in the NFC least. They are both they're both on two of the stronger teams in their division. Whereas Russ is in a absolute bloodbath of a division, AFC West. They could very easily be the best team in that division, or they could be the worst team in that division. Regardless, I think they're going to have to put up some points in order to compete. So I see there being lots of opportunities for Russ to score some points this year. And that's also kind of taking into account that Jalen Hurts, yeah, he's a super, super dynamic player with the ball in his hands. That passing game still does leave a little to be desired. And Dak Prescott has lost several weapons this offseason. Even with Gallup coming back, he's coming back from a bit of an injury. So I'm going to take my chances with Russell Wilson and the potential that they're going to be in a number of shootouts, competing with the likes of the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders.
That's an interesting perspective to put it into that context. Like, for most of us, we're talking about just general fantasy production, but to think about it in a sense that, like, hey, he's in a bloodbath of a division. That's an interesting perspective, because you can look at what they've done historically. And I guess you can say Russell Wilson was in a tough division previously. I mean, they've always been in the competitive division, playing against some pretty good football teams. But that we have never seen a division like the Chargers and Denver and KC. Like, it's going to be this upcoming year. It's going to be insane. But I'm looking at some Jalen Hurts numbers here just for argument's sake. Like, he started off that week one with 33.46. He had a huge week. Then he kind of went into like the 18, 14, whatever. But then he started getting into, leading up to the bye 28, after the bye at 21, 17, and then he concluded the season with a 12-point week, which obviously if you start him in a championship week, that sucks, week 17. But I think the trajectory of Jalen Hurts, especially with the highest rushing floor out of any of them, I think is something that you want to pursue in drafts. And one round difference for me isn't enough to push away from that. It's like there's a reason people are going after Trey Lance so much. We've seen nothing from Trey Lance other than the fact that he can move like crazy, and everybody wants Trey Lance, right? But at least we know what we got with Jalen Hurts with that rushing platform. We have no idea what we got with Trey Lance right now. And I say that name because I saw you typing it in the docket a little bit earlier.
He was going to be kind of a wild card in that conversation, because you're absolutely right. We haven't seen anything out of Trey Lance, and in both of those super flex drafts that I've done, he's been like a second round pick in all of them. He's been like a top 10 quarterback, and like, even though like this is for charity, it is for a good cause. I think that's a huge gamble that it could win you the whole thing, but it could also blow up in your face.
Exactly. And that's where those are the drafts you want to take the risk, but it's still competitive. You're still doing a competitive draft, and you want to have a nice team, and you want to have something to talk about, but it's a risky pick.
Certainly.
You guys want to do my hot take? I know I was going to have this one last episode. I pushed it to this one. You guys want to get it going? This one's spicy, boys. I'm going to give you the heads up there.
I'm excited to hear you say it.
Yeah, I haven't told many people this one because I don't want to maybe get it out there. I thought I had a chance to turn it around, but I'm still going to do it here. So we'll get the hot take going here.
You're not on fire, Ricky Bobby. I'm on fire.
Okay, so context. I had this queued up ready to go after the big Baker Mayfield dilemma, the trade, the conversation that we had. And I I just, with all the weapons I have, and I call weapons the Sam Darnold, I have him in a couple of leagues and some super flex leagues. I was really hoping he was going to pan out last year. It didn't happen. And now Baker Mayfield's in town. And I've always thought, Baker Mayfield's a good, not great quarterback. But I think he's got shafted. He was in a predicament where going into last season, Cleveland Browns were one of the top 3 favorites to win the Super Bowl. And they had high expectations. Then injury started happening and Baker got injured. And then it was, well, we're still going to win the Super Bowl. Well, Baker's thinking, there's a lot of pressure on my shoulders. If I don't start, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to play for my job. And all of a sudden that started getting up in the air and he played injured. And then, there's always the argument, well, if you don't play, you can be replaced. Well, he played injured and he got replaced. So, I think he kind of got the crap end of the stick in this situation. I think he's a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. Now, with that being said, this is one of the better situations he's been. He's been with OBJ, who I think is a pretty good wide receiver, but he was always injured. He never got a full season with him, and now you're in a situation where I think he's going to be even better. So here's my full hot take, and we'll dissect it a little bit, and I'll hear what you guys got to think. Okay, Baker Mayfield is going to win the job as a starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. That's part one. He's going to start the season as the quarterback, as a 1-0 beating his former team. The Carolina Panthers play the Cleveland Browns week 1 of the NFL season. Baker Mayfield's going to start the season 1-0 as a starter, beating his previous team. Feasible. Both are feasible. Here's where it gets spicy. Baker Mayfield is going to finish as QB 15 or higher on the season, beating his highest career finish. His highest career finish was QB 15 in, I think it was his sophomore season. I can't remember off the top of my head here. So that's where it gets real spicy to finish as a top 15 quarterback. So there's 3 parts to this one that has to happen for this hot take to conclude. Now, putting all into context, DJ Moore, really good wide receiver, never had a good quarterback. Christian McCaffrey, incredible running back and check down specialist that could take one to the house just like that. Quarterbacks get those points. Doesn't have to air out a 95-yard bomb. You can put a -2 check down to Christian McCaffrey. You can house it, and he gets all those points. You also have some decent auxiliary pieces that had some draft capital, like Terrace Marshall. That's not great, but it's somebody that had high draft capital going into this past season. You got a really good defense, and you also have a pretty decent offensive line as well. So I think it's obviously a hot take. It's not a lock, but I think there's a lot to put into place that I think he could be successful. So what do you guys think about that one?
Can I go first?
Sure.
All right. So I will buy 2 out of those 3 pieces. I'll buy quite confidently that he's going to be the starter. And I'll even buy him starting the season 1-0. Obviously, if Deshaun Watson is suspended, that's going to be a lot more realistic and achievable than if he's not suspended and he starts that game for the Browns. But the part that I am hands off on entirely is him finishing the season as a top 15 quarterback. And that's not necessarily his fault. It's just the quarterback landscape. Looking at the top 15 quarterbacks from last year, I could only really realistically see 2 of them falling from that top 15 window. And that is Tannehill, QB 12, and Carson Wentz, who somehow finished QB 14. I don't know what the heck happened. I'm surprised to see that name there. So I could see 2 of those guys falling from that top 15 threshold. But then there's also the likes of Russell Wilson, who is QB 16, and Mac Jones, QB 18, Matt Ryan, QB 20, and Tua, QB 26, who I think all have a better chance of being a top 15 quarterback than Baker does. So not necessarily any fault of Baker, but it's just the people that he's competing with to get into that top 15 range.
The last time we seen him healthy, he was, like I said, good, not great. We also haven't seen, because when he was in his injury, we haven't seen him get that rushing platform back up a little bit as well, too. He's not known as a rushing quarterback, but those rushing numbers do help, obviously, the fantasy production. So, and I'm also banking on an injury here too. There's always injury that kind of goes in that play, but it's spicy. Like I said, it's real spicy. He was a guy that was interested in Superflex leagues as my quarterback 2 or 3. Quarterback 3 with some upsides at QB2. He went, unfortunately, before me in the Scott Fishbowl, so I didn't get him. He actually went way earlier than I expected. But Armin, you're the captain of the spicy takes. I'm curious if you think I can go 3 for 3 or no on that one.
I think I would be willing to bet my life savings that he will win the starting QB job there. It is Darnold is, I don't believe in him at all.
He's done.
Yeah, so I think it's Mayfield's job to lose. Starting 1-0, beating the Cleveland Browns, that I think might be tougher in my mind than the QB 15 actually.
Didn't Carolina though. I
have trouble believing in CMC anymore, but I guess CMC only needs to play that one game for it to be 1-0. I think that Cleveland team is just better than the Carolina team. So it's going to have to take Mayfield putting that team on his shoulders and being like, I want to prove that they made a mistake by getting rid of me there. And we all know that that's pretty tough to do in a football game, not impossible. But a guy like Mayfield, I don't think quite has the gutso to put a team on his shoulders like that. But I could see a path to him being QB 15. I think that'd be a bit more likely, to be honest, than beating the Cleveland Browns. But like Zach said, there's some guys there that he's got to beat, but also some of those guys have to prove themselves, and there also can't be injuries and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I'll take 2 or 3. If I can go 2 for 3, that's a success. If I go 3 for 3, that's a huge W. I'm not gonna lie to you guys.
If Watson is suspended for that game, that week 1 game, and it's Baker versus Jacoby Brissett, Red Zone won't have 1 second of that game on.
No, it's gonna be who throws a pick 6, I think. I shouldn't say that because I'm cheering.
They'll have Chris Hansen on there for 2 seconds as like,
we're gonna go to the
like JC Horn runs one in for 6.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the Octovision and we're not gonna bring in the Carolina game. Oh man, I really miss Chris Hansen. That's so funny. Oh, good stuff. Anything to add here, fellas, before we wrap this one up?
No, this was a fun one.
Yeah. Episode 53 here in the books, folks. We'll have episode 54 coming up right away, and then we might even have a little bit of a charity special episode depending on how fast we get our second charity league in here. But I think that is going to do it here for episode 53. On behalf of myself, Zach, and Armin, the 306 Fantasy Football family here, and obviously 22 Fresh, our major sponsor, thank you very much for listening. Take care, everybody, and let's talk soon.